Now, I want to speak about racism in Australia. The truth is the Albanese government is not serious or genuine about tackling racism. Isn't it ironic? A left-wing, woke government that claims to care about minority groups has taken no action whatsoever on recommendations to address racism. And racism has never been worse in modern Australia. It's never been worse. We've had preschools and synagogues firebombed. Too many buildings to count have been damaged and vandalised. Attacks, abuse, death threats. This is all the face of racism. People have been ostracised because of their religion. Lists of Jews have been circulated and those on it cancelled. This is all racism. The inescapable reality is that Australia is now an emotionally and at times physically unsafe place to live. And that is just a fact. Now, we know the government has refused to lift a finger on Envoy Gillian Segal's recommendations. We know they did not adopt a single one of our Sky News Anti-Semitism Summit recommendations. But I was shocked to see that even the Racial Discrimination Commissioner has had no luck. He revealed yesterday that his recommendations hadn't been implemented since he handed down his report in November. That's about 9 months ago. Have a look.
We have the roadmap to make this happen. In November last year, the Australian Human Rights Commission released the National Anti-Racism Framework after extensive consultations with communities across Australia. The National Anti-Racism Framework has been in the public domain for 9 months now. We are still waiting for commitment from the federal and state governments.
Now, Giridharaman Sivaraman's racism roadmap has 63 recommendations. Now, they don't all need to be adopted, but the Albanese government could have at least taken the issue seriously with a proper response. Now, some of the recommendations, I read them all today, some of the recommendations were ludicrous and should be immediately dismissed, like reviewing counter-terrorism laws to investigate discrimination on different communities, or lifting the minimum age of criminal responsibility to 14 in all jurisdictions. But there were some sensible ones. He suggested legal protections against online hate with enforcement against digital platforms. He suggested that employers, including governments, commit to anti-racism training and public awareness anti-racism campaigns. Now, Sivaraman also wants a national anti-racism task force to tackle rising hate across Australia. Now, you may like the ideas or not, but the point is the government hasn't been bothered to respond to this report at all since November. Now, he was appointed by the Albanese government. He previously worked at Morris Blackburn law firm, where the lawyer, Josh Bernstein, he's the principal lawyer there. You may recall he ran the case for Antoinette Lattouf. It tells you something about the positioning of this race commissioner. And outrageously for a race commissioner, he can't mention anti-Semitism without also speaking about anti-Palestinian racism, as he puts it, as you can hear here.
The war in Gaza has triggered a terrifying surge of anti-Semitism, anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Arab racism and Islamophobic hate.
Now, I absolutely do accept there has been racism against all ethnicities and minority groups. But there's no question anti-Semitism has sadly been the predominant type of racism over the past 2 years, with entire federal and state police task forces set up to try and tackle it. But this is who the Albanese government appointed to the role, someone who won't speak about anti-Semitism on its own. And nevertheless, Albanese has even put his report on ice, just like they put Gillian Segal's. And the Prime Minister still hasn't criticised the hate-filled Harbour Bridge rally, despite terror flags and Nazi swastikas on display, despite the organiser refusing to call Hamas a terrorist organisation, despite police now launching a series of investigations, despite the fact that yet again Jews were asked to stay home for their own security. Now, I say this to you, when it's not safe to walk around as a Jew in Sydney or Melbourne, this is a major problem for Australia. And the only takeout is that the pro-Palestinian Albanese government is happy to allow racism, especially against Jews, to fester. And racism is now so rampant in Australia that life in our country, at times, is unrecognisable. And this is a problem, as I say, for our entire country. It's a point Josh Frydenberg made at an event I did with him last week.
When anti-Semitism moves from the shameful fringe to the public square, it's no longer about the Jews, it's about everyone else. And this is my second point. We need every Australian to know this is not a fight against anti-Semitism, this is a fight for Australia. And they are not liberal values, they are not Labor values that are at stake. What is at stake is Australian values.
So well said from Josh Frydenberg. And yet this issue of racism is only going to get worse, with now the Prime Minister indicating firmly that he'll recognise a Palestinian state even before the hostages are brought home and even while Hamas remains in power in Gaza. Now, Albanese said that he wants Israelis, he said this today, that he wants Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in peace and security. But that can't happen while Hamas is still in Gaza. It can't happen until the hostages are free. This is such a morally depraved position we're seeing from the Albanese government, giving a terror group a state. And this is how little Albanese cares for Jews, that he's literally planning to reward terrorists with a state even after the cruel, barbaric and depraved massacre of October 7. Now, before we move on with the rest of the show, just a final note on this. Now, for those of us who are Jewish, this racism has been crushing and relentless. But for other kind-hearted Australians, they've hated watching this explode under the Albanese government. And we've seen this attitude with the 1,000+ comments that have flowed into Chris Kenny's inbox. Now, if you've missed Chris's show this week, he's been asking Australians to write in with messages of support for the Jewish community after the hateful Harbour Bridge rally. And I genuinely thank my friend and colleague Chris for being such an ally. And I thank everyone who's written into him with such beautiful and heartwarming comments. This is the real Australia. This is Middle Australia, not those people who marched on the bridge under terrorist banners.